Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee is now in session. Would the members please stand? Would the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Capley will introduce the chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Brother Mickey Bracken has served 44 years in ministry. Brother Mickey was born and raised in Town Creek, Alabama. He married his high school sweetheart, Cindy, and has been married for 44 years. They have one daughter, a son, and 7 grandchildren. Brother Mickey is a graduate of the University of Northern Alabama. He received his Master's of Divinity from Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. He has served 32 of his 44 years of ministry in the great state of Tennessee and retired in 2019 from Mars Hill Baptist Church in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, after serving there for 28 years. He is currently serving as my pastor of First Baptist Church in Waynesboro, Tennessee. Members, I truly cannot express the admiration, the respect, and the love that I have for this man standing behind me today. He has been my pastor in some capacity for the majority of my life, and I'm honored to introduce him. Please welcome Brother Mickey Bracken.
Thank you, Representative Capley, or as I would say, Kip. I baptized this guy when he was just a little fellow. That's several years ago. But I want to thank you for the privilege and the honor and the blessing of being here today. For a country boy from Town Creek, Alabama, this is big time stuff. And I just want to thank you for allowing me the blessing of being with you today. I want to honor your time, and I certainly don't want to abuse my time with you. But I just simply say this to you before we pray together. I count it a wonderful privilege and a grace of God for me in my life to be here with you today. I thought about what could I say in 1 minute of time that might encourage you or have an impact upon your life. And then I remembered back to a couple of times when basically total strangers said something to me that impacted my life. One would be in 2017, July, when a doctor with love and compassion told me that, as much as he regretted having to say it, that I had cancer. That impacted my life, to say the least. And then in 2019, as I retired after 28 years of service at Mars Hill Baptist Church in Lawrenceburg, thought I had everything planned out according to retirement. Well, something called COVID came along. And then probably the greatest impact a total stranger had on my life was on a Saturday morning, October the 10th, 2020, when a nurse, and again a very compassionate and loving doctor, came into an intensive care unit at Murray Regional Hospital in Columbia and said, "We've done everything we can for you, and in our opinion, the best thing that we can do is for you to go on a ventilator." I'm kindly a Sergeant Joe Friday, if anybody remembers those days. I like the facts, just give me the facts. So I asked, I said, "Well, if I go on this ventilator, what's my chances, according to your best opinion, of coming off this ventilator?" And he, again with grace, said 40%. Now, looking back over the past 2.5 years, I think probably he was giving a gracious number when he said 40%. But 8 days on that vent, and God, in his grace, spared my life. So today, I'm just simply here as a testimony of God's grace. And I thank each and every one of you for what you do, regardless of where you're from, what area you represent, whether it be urban or metropolitan area or a country rural area. I just want to thank you for what you do, because Tennessee's my home. My children are here, my grandchildren are here, and everything you do influences not only the people of your constituency, but remember, it affects my children and grandchildren. So I thank you, and may God bless you all. Let's bow together as we pray, please. Father, I do thank you for the wonderful privilege to gather in this place today. Father, what a wonderful honor it is for me. And now I ask you, Father, if you would bless each and every one gathered here today. And Lord, I pray that you might give them wisdom in every decision that's made, that you might guide them in truth. And Father, again, help each person to remember that they're representing a lot of folks when they take a place in these hallowed, sacred halls. So I ask now your blessings upon this day and everything that's to be done. And we give you all of our thanks, and we do this in the name of our Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Representative Capley will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge.
Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 97 members present.
Let the journal reflect Representative Hemmer is excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Representative Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant of Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guest to the well. Representative Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to request at this time that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, read the resolution.
Mr. Speaker, House Joint Resolution 163 by Chairman Kiesling, a resolution to honor Bruce Lamb upon being selected as Tennessee Football Coaches Association's 2022-2023 Coach of the Year. Also, Mr. Speaker, House Joint Resolution 47 by Chairman Kiesling, a resolution to honor and commend the members and coaches of Clay County High School Bulldogs football team, where it is fitting that this General Assembly should salute those student athletes who, through their extraordinary efforts, have distinguished themselves as true champions of whom we can all be proud. And whereas one such exemplary group of young athletes is the Clay County High School Bulldogs football team, whose members have proven themselves to be the fiercest of competitors and truly worthy of admiration by finishing runner-up in the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association Division I Class A State Championship. And whereas during this truly historic season for the Clay County High School football program, the Bulldogs finished with a record of 13-2 as they won the Region 4A title for the first time in school history, advanced to the semifinal round of the playoffs for the second time, and made their first appearance in the state championship game. And whereas the members of the Clay County High School Bulldogs football team epitomize all that is good in today's student athletes, as they have achieved a premier level of success in competition while exhibiting the highest degree of character in all aspects of life. And whereas the members of the General Assembly find it appropriate to pause in their deliberations to acknowledge and applaud the members of the Clay County High School Bulldogs for their outstanding performance this season. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we hereby honor and commend the members and coaches of the Clay County High School Bulldog football team upon their runner-up finish in the TSSAA Division I Class A State Championship, and extend to them our best wishes for every continuing success in all their future endeavors.
Representative Kiesling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you heard the clerk. This is the first time in our school history, Clay County, that we have gotten this far, where we came in number 2. Next year, we're going to come in number 1. Absolutely. But we're so tickled to have these students down here and staff as well, the coaching staff and administration. We'll get to a quick introduction in just a moment. But at this moment, I would like to defer to the school's state senator, Senator Yeager, for just a few brief remarks. Senator Yeager.
Thank you very much, Representative. It's an honor for me to be here and pay tribute to these athletes from Clay County, and they're a very fine principal. The principal, the coach, has done an outstanding job, not just with the principles of basketball, but the principles of character. And I wish we had the time for you to get to know these men and women, these young men and women, and you'd see that he's done a good job in molding their character. So that's what coaching is all about. So I'm delighted to welcome the coach and the team here, and I'm very proud of the fact that they placed second in the state championship. And next year, as Kelly's already said, we're going to take the gold home next year. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thanks, Senator Yeager. Next, certainly, thank you. Next, I want to, as Senator Yeager mentioned, we do have Principal Arms with us, but at this moment and time, we are going to ask our school director, Diana Monroe, for just a few brief remarks. Director Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Representative Kiesling, Senator Yeager. Wow, it's an honor and a privilege to be in your presence this morning. Thank you for inviting the Clay County Bulldogs. I just want you guys to know the best part of Clay County is standing before you. We have the best. Thank you for honoring our football team, our county, everything about us. Come to visit us in Clay County when you can. Thank you.
Representative Kiesling.
Thank you, Director Monroe, and thank you, Speaker. And of course, we're going to ask you, Mr. Speaker, if you could come down in just a moment, but something that I don't know that this has ever occurred before. I can't recall it occurring. But yes, we are presenting them with these students, these future leaders, with a resolution. But this championship, as we'll call it, came in through the direction of a great coach. And Coach Lim, you don't know this, but you also today are receiving a resolution. And we are so proud of you and your leadership. Members, Coach Bruce Lamb, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Very, very surprising. I appreciate everything. You know, as a head coach, you rely on so many people. You rely on your coaches, your players, and none of this could ever happen without these guys. These 36 guys and these 5 guys I got coached with me. I've been very blessed and very lucky to inherit this bunch, and I'm tickled to death. Thank you all very much.
Representative Keesling.
All right, and finally, what I didn't tell you, members, is that Coach Lamb, the reason we're presenting him with this resolution is because he was named the Tennessee Football Coaches Association's 22-23 Coach of the Year. So let's give him a great welcome and a thank you for that. At this time, Speaker, could you come down and come down and get us a photo with us, please?
Representative Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well, please. Representative Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, read the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 163 by Chairman Reagan, a resolution honoring and congratulate the Anderson County High School football team, TSSAA Division I Class 4A state champions. Whereas the members of this General Assembly are pleased to especially honor and commend those successful high school teams that through their magnificent exploits bring honor to Tennessee and serve as exceptional ambassadors for this state. And whereas the Anderson County High School football team achieved an extraordinary level of success during the 2022 season, winning the coveted Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association Division I Class 4A state football championship. And whereas the Anderson County Mavericks vanquished every opponent for an undefeated season on their way to the Blue Cross Bowl championship game on December 3rd, 2022 at Finley Stadium in Chattanooga, where they beat Pearl Cone in a hard-fought battle 34-30 in the title matchup. And whereas Pearl Cone fought back to make it 34-30 in the fourth quarter, but the young men of Anderson County sealed the victory with an interception by Bryson Vowell and thus secured the right to hoist the iconic gold football trophy. And whereas the victory saw Anderson County High School claim its first football state championship in school history on their first trip to the championship game as they ended the season with a perfect record of 15-0. And whereas the Mavericks' heart and determination were exhibited as they advanced through the football playoffs, perhaps best exemplified by their 29-13 victory over Red Bank in the state semifinals, where they scored 29 unanswered points after halftime. And whereas state championships are achieved only through hard work, dedication, and the ability to work together as a team and excel with cooperative spirit, the Mavericks exhibited each of these rare qualities during their championship season. And whereas we find it appropriate to acknowledge and applaud the football players of Anderson County High School for serving as exemplars of high quality of the youth of Tennessee, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 113th General Assembly in the state of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that we honor and congratulate the players, coaching staff, team support staff, administrators, cheerleaders, and fans of the Anderson County High School football team on winning the 2022 TSSAA Division I Class 4A state football championship.
Representative Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Representative Butler and myself, representing Anderson County, we could not be more proud of this group. Mr. Speaker, I would like for you to recognize the coach to say a few words.
Yes, sir. They are recognized.
I'd like to say thank you for having us out today and recognizing our boys and our program. It's quite an honor for us. It's the first state championship in our school's history. It's rare for a rural school like ours to have the accomplishments that this group of kids had this past year. I'd also like to thank Representative Reagan. He's supported us over the years. He's actually been to several ball games out at Anderson County High School over the years. We appreciate that. And we always take the opportunity to thank the Lord Jesus Christ for the opportunities he's given me in life and our program and the community that we serve in and are a part of. And we're thankful for the freedoms we're afforded in this country to do the things we do. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Representative Butler.
We just appreciate the opportunity to recognize a team that has gone to this level. And I want to make note of this large trophy that's been accompanied with y'all and congratulate you on behalf of this body and Representative Reagan and myself.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as a special note to someone who claims to be from the District of Champions, who shall go nameless, I want to make sure that the members of this body see that a true championship organization is in fact here before us. Mr. Speaker, would you come down for pictures, please?
All right, we're under welcoming and honoring. Representative Barrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor and privilege to welcome today in the gallery to our left a group from Leadership Lewis County. If y'all would stand up and wave so everybody can see y'all from Lewis County, Hohenwald. They're led by Debbie Landers, Executive Director of the Hohenwald-Lewis County Chamber of Commerce. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you. Representative Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, can you join me as we remember today an incredible public servant? Our district attorney in Williamson County, Kim Helper, who at one time represented Hickman, Lewis, Perry, and Williamson County, passed away suddenly this week from a brief illness. Kim Helper was an extraordinary public servant. I was blessed to serve as a grand jury foreman, and Kim presented every case. She never turned it over to her assistant DA. She came there to ensure fairness and equal justice under the law to everyone. Kim left a remarkable family, and
she was much loved in our district. And join me as we remember Kim with a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative McCalman at Whitson's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like, if y'all would, to welcome my youngest daughter, Emerson McCalman, who is paging for us this morning. So if y'all would make her feel welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize a person that keeps us all safe. Today is Mr. Reuben Sanders' birthday of the Sergeant at Arms. Today is his birthday. He can't see us, but he can hear us. So please make him feel very appreciated today on his birthday. Thank you.
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you will join me and Representative Lynn, we'd like to welcome some friends from Wilson County today. We have Miss Dory Mitchell, Miss Kathy Haskins, and this year's Leadership Wilson class. Make them feel welcome, folks.
Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, would you please welcome one of my 11 granddaughters, Brielle Perez, who is here serving as a page. She's hiding back there. So there you go. Come on out and let them see you. So please welcome her to the chamber today. Thank you so much.
Representative Jernigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My oldest daughter is going to turn 25 on Sunday. And while we should be giving her a gift, about 2.5 weeks ago, she gave Michelle and I a gift. We're going to be grandparents for the first time. So, really excited about that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Leaving the gallery today is a really good friend of mine that happened to be here with Lewis County leadership today. His name's Houston Hamlin. Met him when he was a tech student. Worked on my campaigns quite a bit. Super dude. He and his wife, Catherine, are expecting their first baby in July, so we're really excited for them. So congratulations to them. Also, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to wish my daughter, who now is a Texan, happy birthday. She turns 19 on Saturday. So happy birthday, Lulu. Thanks.
Representative Raper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome Brian Trotter. He is a good friend of mine and a constituent, and he is manager of the credit union in Chattanooga, and he will be representing later today the 100th anniversary of the credit union leaders. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Public announcement time. Members, we started the week at 20-something degrees. We're going to end this week at 80-something degrees. Take your antihistamines now so you have a good weekend. Thank you.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Together, we will like to recognize Murray County's top 10 from Central High School, Keokuk, Hampshire, Mount Pleasant, Santa Fe, and Spring Hill. Y'all please make them feel welcome. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two things I'd like to bring to the recognition to. I have two special guests from Hamilton County, Paula and Mark Smelser. I want to welcome them to Nashville and to the Capitol. And also this Sunday will be my mother's 94th birthday, and I want to wish her a happy birthday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Have I missed anyone? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing in line that has to be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 1,564 through 1,568 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration.
Lear Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 14, 3793, 125, 183, 234, 273, 331, 420, 476, 492, 1,078, 1,086, 1,155, 1,195, 1,219, 1,320, and 1,347 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration. House bills on second consideration. Petitions, memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, on this Sweet 16 Go Vols, Lady Vols Thursday, I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentlemen, moves passage of the consent calendar, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections? Been filed.
Mr. Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to point out to the members that item 4 and 5, we're recognizing the 2022 Realtor of the Year and also the 2023 real estate, the Realtors president for this year. So I'd love to have you sign on. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Anyone else seeking recognition? You. Representative Capley at Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize, members. I have Wayne County leadership here over here to my left. Y'all please stand up. Members, make them feel welcome. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Out of order. We're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mitchell, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Having received constitutional majority, I declare consent calendar passed without objection. Most reconsidered table. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1253, but Chairman Crawford, relative to witnesses, Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 476.
Chairman Crawford moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 476, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 476 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Crawford moves passage of Senate Bill 476 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call for First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is in the Senate bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move to withdraw House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1253 basically does two things. It changes a couple of words within the TCA 4025-129. This was brought to me by the district attorneys, and we have a program to where if a witness lives more than 5 miles away from where they've been subpoenaed to testify, then there is a fund that they can put in for to be reimbursed for travel and board. We passed that bill last year, 2165, addressing certain things within this bill. We thought we had it covered, but there's still a lot of confusion about it. So what this bill does is it takes away that confusion. It allows the Department of Corrections to pay this upfront out of their funds. And it also takes the word may and changes it to shall and takes the word immediately out of the bill. It's what this bill does. I appreciate your support and I stand for questions. I renew my motion.
Chairman Crawford renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 476, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 476, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 374 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, relative to fantasy sports. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 218.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 218 without objection. So ordered. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 218 on third and final consideration.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh moves passage of Senate Bill 218 on third and final consideration. Seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill comes from the Secretary of State's office, and what we're trying to do is transfer the oversight of fantasy sports from the Secretary of State's office to the Sports Wagering Advisory Council. This makes sense to make this move to take advantage of the efficiencies from centralized regulation of sports wagering and fantasy sports. With that, I'll renew my motion.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 218 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays, 3 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 218 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1387 by Chairman Reagan, relative to nonprofit gaming. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1203.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1203, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1203 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 1203 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 1 is the same as the Senate amendment. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 1203 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 95 nays, 1 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 1203 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1453 by Chairman Faison, relative to wild animals.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage of House Bill 1453 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Faison moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. We'll defer to Chairman Faison for further explanation. We move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption of amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Faison renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is almost unbearable. Can I, so it begins. This makes amendments to the current law against taking of a bear. Can you give me an example of a situation that someone might deem the danger posed by the bear to be real based on reasonable grounds? Can you give us kind of a real life circumstance?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman from Davidson County, for those of us who live in Appalachia, bear population has exponentially grown, especially for those who have property or houses that border the national park. The last year, all of my neighbors, all of us that board the national park have experienced all sorts of trauma. Our animals have been killed, our property's been destroyed, and according to current TCA, unless a bear is actually coming after you physically, you don't have the ability to stop it. And so this is after you've alerted the TWRA, letting them know that they're destroying your property, destroying your animals, that you can stop a bear with deadly force.
Chairman Clemens.
So this goes beyond a bear stealing your picnic or your pot of honey. That's not a real threat we're talking about here.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you will bear with me just a moment. I will share a story with you that happened this fall that you'll be interested in. We have I call it a Tennessee room. It's a room that we built on the back porch of my house. It's all wood. It's beautiful. Glass. It's all windows. My wife was struggling to sleep one night, so she went out and slept in the Tennessee room. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard her screaming. And our bedroom is just around the corner from that. So I came out of their bedroom and started to come down the hall, and there's a massive bear standing at the glass door, pushing in like this. And that bear had been coming to our house every day, not just emptying our trash, our picnic basket, had killed our cat, killed our dog, got into my car, messed up my car. So when that happened, my wife's like, you have to kill it. And I said, honey, TWRA says it's against the law for me to kill this bear unless it was coming after you. She said, that's ridiculous, change the law. So this is on the behest of my wife. And I would say, Representative Chairman Clemens, that if your wife asked you to change the law, you would try to as well.
Chairman Clemens.
Well, I can assure you, Mr. Chairman, that my wife lets me hear about changing the law up here an awful lot as a woman in the state of Tennessee. But I will say, I was encouraged to make a cocaine bear reference. I'll defer on that one. But I am sorry to hear about that circumstance, and obviously your intellect is evidenced by following your wife's instructions. So I appreciate the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Faison.
I would just like to say this is a bare necessities for those of us at Board of the Park.
Hang on. Representative Hardaway.
No, it's not that, colleagues. It's not that. I'm not going to get in that game. Can't win against Faison in that game. I'm going to ask, what happens to the meat? Is it donated to charity? Is it the option of the citizen? What happens there?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's actually an excellent question. Something that's very big in East Tennessee is an outfit called Hunters for the Hungry. And any of my neighbors, those of us that deal with this, we would immediately call Hunters for the Hungry and ask them to come get the bear. And they'll grind it up, make bear meat, bear sausage, all kind of wonderful stuff, and give it to those that are hungry.
Representative Hardaway. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kiesling.
Sponsor yield.
Chairman Faison.
As long as it's not an unbearable question.
Representative Kiesling.
No, it's not. And I've been beating myself up on this one. I just wish we could have included the big, you're talking about national parks. Well, we have another one up in the Great 38, the Big South Fork National Park. And we've had issues up there as well. So hopefully maybe next year we can come back with an amendment to this one. I'd like to include Big South Fork. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. We're all voting. Those in favor of House Bill 1453 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 91, nay 5, present not voting.
House Bill 1453 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 782 by Chairman White relative to financial literacy education.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 782 on third and final consideration.
Chairman White moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chair Lady Moody moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, it requires our LEAs to respond to a survey only about financial literacy sent out by our Financial Literacy Commission and the Department of Education to understand our current financial literacy instruction in our schools. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman White renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 782 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
House Bill 782, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1151 by Chairman White and others relative to sick leave bank. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 533.
Chairman White moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 533. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 533 on third and final consideration.
Chairman White moves passage of Senate Bill 533 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 1 is the same as the Senate amendment. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does is allows our state employees that participate in the state sick leave bank to use those sick leave bank accumulated days to take time off to care for a minor child in their home. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman White renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 533 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 533 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1163 by Chairman Todd and others relative to health care.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1163 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation. Thank you.
Chairman Kumar moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act protects access to faith-based health care for Tennessee members of the Healthcare Sharing Ministries, HCSMs. This preserves HCSMs as a viable choice for Tennesseans who are seeking a healthcare solution that is consistent with their religious beliefs. It clarifies for consumers that HCSMs are not insurance, and it ensures that HCSMs are being held accountable to the Attorney General and are subject to regulations. There are safe harbor laws like this in 31 states, and this is model legislation endorsed by ALEC. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Todd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1163 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 76, 17 nays.
House Bill 1163, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Motion reconsiders table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1550 by Chairman Todd, relative to hotel motel tax for Madison County and the city of Jackson.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1550 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Todd moves passage by consecutive. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
And Madison County, and it from December 31st of. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Motion, any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Representative Mitchell, you want to be addressed? Sorry, sir. Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is a local bill concerning your county?
Representative Todd.
That is correct, sir.
Representative Mitchell.
So what the county commission send a 2/3 vote resolution up here for you to do this?
Representative Todd.
Mr. Speaker, the County Commission and the City of Jackson both sent resolutions for this private act.
Representative Mitchell.
So local control.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Mitchell.
So the locals are in control of this and they're asking the state government to do something.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The locals have requested that the state take action since they are subdivisions of this state.
Representative Mitchell. All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Sapicki.
To the sponsor of the bill, does this bill affect any other county in the state of Tennessee?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It does not affect any other county, only Madison and the City of Jackson.
Representative Sapicki.
So it's safe to say that most of us here, if not all of us, this doesn't affect any of our other counties. Is that correct?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would repeat, it only affects Madison County and the City of Jackson.
Representative Sapicki.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1550, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 89 nays, 4 present, not voting.
House Bill 1550, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 5 by Chairman Todd, known as a resolution to make application to the Congress of the United States pursuant to Article 5 of the United States Constitution to call a convention proposing amendments to set a limit on the number of terms to which a person may be elected as a member of the United States House of Representatives, and to set a limit on the number of terms to which a person may be selected as a member of the United States Senate.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 5.
Chairman Todd moves adoption. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the clerk read, this resolution makes application to Congress as provided by Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States of America to call a convention limited to proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America to set a limit on the number of terms to which a person may be elected as a member of the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chris Dodd renews the motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Representative Todd.
Yes, sir.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you for yielding. I appreciate your effort, but I guess my question to you, Mr. Sponsor, would be, don't we really have term limits now? In other words, every 2 years, it's from a state level, voters have an opportunity to vote us in or out. And of course, same federal level for the House. So I'm wondering, why do we need term limits in when it takes 2 or 3 to find out what you need to know about serving?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Congressional term limits is probably the most popular issue in America right now, with about 82% of support from the public, and this is bipartisan support. However, it's easy to overlook that congressional term limits also is actually effective public policy that will solve much of the dysfunction in Washington. Unlike states, there's no pathway for an individual with private sector success to serve meaningfully in Congress without fully abandoning their private career for 15 or 20 years. Therefore, Congress has become a haven for those who only have political experience. Successful business people, for the most part, choose not to run. With term limits, industrious people could run and serve for a short time, then return to live under the laws they made. This would provide diversity of experience in a body which is severely lacking it. As we all know, our founders intended for legislatures to be citizen legislatures. That's why they set up the system that we have under the constitutions of the United States and of the individual states. What has become in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, a career field, unfortunately, is counterproductive, and it's certainly counter to what our founders intended. Folks get there, they've created a bigger kingdom for them to be over. They've taken rights away from our states. As you well know, we can enumerate those. Think about all the departments that have been created, the vast bureaucracy that has been created that gives them more and more power where it should be with the states. As many of you understand, our Constitution states that the states are the center of power of government. The states created the counties, the states created the cities, and the states created the federal government. And our founders put very strict reins on the federal government for that reason, because they saw that in the future, if the federal government grew to the point that it would take control away from the states gradually, as it has, that then it would become just a career field for individuals that would seize power away from the states and stay there. And that's what we have, unfortunately. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, sir, but those are all factors in why we're bringing this resolution and why, again, 82% of Americans believe this is the right thing to do.
Representative Shaw.
Well, I am a former committee to ordain you because I didn't know I was going to get a whole sermon there. I really didn't get the answer I was looking for, but with what time I have left, I guess my question to you, does this just only affect federal government, or would it also affect us in state government?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This only affects the federal representatives and senators because, number one, the Article 5 only is applicable to federal offices in the federal Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, as I previously stated. And we also know from some court cases that states cannot set their own limits for their own delegates to Congress. That's been tried before and was challenged, and that was deemed unconstitutional. So this is the method by which Congress set out when our founders set out to form this great country. They put this article in the Constitution for citizens to be able to propose amendments themselves without necessarily going through Congress. That's if Congress is not responsive.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you. With all due respect, because my time is running out, I think it's a little hypocritical to put this off on the federal government, and we serve longer terms. I could not support this. Thank you.
Representative Todd, anything? No. Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm just going to quickly read from Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislature of 2/3 of several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments. And so I simply rise today in support of Article 5, an Article 5 convention, a convention to propose amendments. So many times, and I'm speaking to many who have sent me an email who are deemed themselves constitutional experts or passionate about the Constitution. It's almost like Scripture. You can't pick out and take certain aspects of Scripture that you like and ignore the other parts. Well, it's the same thing with the Constitution. Either we believe in our founders, their intent and their wisdom, or we don't. And so Article 5, we have never, ever tried Article 5 as a legislature and as a citizenry. The founders gave us Article 5, is written by Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist and James Madison in the Federalist, specifically 43 and 85. They gave us Article 5 to check an out-of-control federal government. And let's be really honest. We compare the federal government and how the federal government is run versus the state of Tennessee. There is no comparison. Between Republicans and Democrats, let's be really transparent. They've run our country into the ditch, and the states have a responsibility to pull ourselves out of that. We, the states, created the federal government. The founders gave the power to we, the people. Government derives its power from the consent of the governed. Shame on us for giving them the power they've gotten to take us to the 30 trillion plus debt. Again, both parties. So why would we not take an opportunity to use an Article 5 convention, taking advantage of the power we're given by the founders as states to put a check on the federal government? This is our responsibility, and this is our time to do this. We control the convention, 3/4, 2/3 to call, 3/4 to ratify. We set the rules. We send those who will be going to the convention, and 3/4 have to ratify. So if we don't agree, then we don't ratify. It's a convention to propose amendments. So members, Mr. Speaker, sponsor, thank you for bringing this. If there is ever a time for us to do this, that time is right now. Either we believe in the Constitution as a whole or we don't. We can't pick and choose. So now would be the time to use Article 5 and utilize the check the founders gave us to rein in an out-of-control federal government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Thank you. Representative Jernigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to push back a little bit on the comments made about two things on the Constitution. The first would be the enumerated powers that you mentioned. There's 18 of them. And they have to stay in the confine of those powers, and I agree. But the 18th power is the necessary and proper clause, in which Congress can do whatever is necessary and proper to achieve the goal of the other 17 powers. That's where your departments come from. And it was first challenged in Marbury versus Madison when Alexander tried to create the first central bank. Jefferson went nuts, and then they go to the Supreme Court. And John Marshall says, yes, the necessary proper clause is appropriate. And I think that's where people misunderstand, coupled with the supremacy clause, coupled with the 14th Amendment. That's totally in the government's purview. The second, I always hear that the states created Congress. It's true. The first 13 states created Congress. The other 37 of us asked for permission. Congress let us in. The state of Franklin didn't make it. And you know what they used? They used the Tennessee Plan. Even DC today is using the Tennessee Plan. So, yeah, the states, under the 10th Amendment, and I went through this with nullification just earlier, that with the supremacy clause, which is also in the Constitution, Article 6, and like my friend from Knox County says, you have to take all of the Constitution. Just don't pick from it. So I appreciate, I told you earlier in committee, I don't vote for Article 5s, but I appreciate you taking the time to listen.
Representative Todd. All right. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, this is a very dangerous proposal that has never happened in our nation's history for a reason. There's no language in the U.S. Constitution to limit a convention to just one issue. So this can potentially roll back all of our rights when it comes to the right to free speech, the right to exercise our vote, the right to free assembly. This is a bill being pushed by the special interests like ALEC that Representative Todd said he didn't have his other bill sponsored by, but these are sponsored by groups like ALEC. It is very dangerous because there are no rules to govern who picks the delegates. There's no rules on how they will be selected. There's no rules or guarantees that the American people would be equally represented, and there's no limit on undue corporate influence. And so, Representative Todd, this is a very dangerous proposal, but I expect nothing less, as many of your bills are. And so what I question with this proposal is what limits do you see on the expansion of calling an Article 5 convention? How do we limit it to this one proposal that you're saying, because you're saying that this is just about term limits when we know this is really about something bigger? How do we limit it to just that one issue when our Constitution has no limits on the extent of what a convention would, the parameters of a convention? Can you respond to that?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Jones.
A non-answer is an answer, colleagues. A non-answer is an answer. And if you are too ashamed to answer the intent of this legislation, it shows that we should not trust this legislation if you cannot take seriously a process that has never been happened. We have never had a constitutional convention except the one called in 1787. And so if you cannot answer why we need one, I would encourage my colleagues to question why he cannot answer. It's because Alec did not give him the answer to answer that question.
Representative Ritchie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sponsor, thank you for bringing this resolution. I fully support this Convention of States resolution that you've got. And I support it to the point that I actually ran two pieces of legislation, or attempted to, through this body. One, providing a referendum process for voting at the local level, extending it even for local municipalities, for county and city commission, which several members of this body voted down. And then I attempted to run a constitutional amendment for the state of Tennessee to put 16-year term limits on our body specifically. And that was voted down with only one individual voting in favor of that. So I support term limits at all levels, and thank you for bringing this piece forward.
Representative Martin of Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor, for bringing this resolution. You know, I can only think of one time in American history where the federal Congress, 70% were wiped out, 67, 8%, was in 1816. In March of that year, because Congress decided it was no longer going to be a citizen legislature, but was going to be paid a salary and become a professional political class. And when the people stood for election the next year, the people of America voted out that Congress 67%. They went back into session with the 15th Congress, and they repealed that law immediately. And that is what's wrong with Washington today, is that we have a political class. And what is right with Tennessee is that we have a citizen legislator like our founders intended. And so I thank the sponsor for this, because I think we need to send a message that we are for a citizen legislature. That is we the people that need to be heard. So thank you.
Representative Todd. No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate those comments, and you've certainly summed up a lot of what I'm saying. Thank you, sir.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Sponsor, for bringing this legislation. I too support this, and frankly, I feel that it is our right and our duty as state legislators to pass legislation like this. And one thing I hear a lot is that people are afraid of a runaway convention. And a few years ago, Representative, I'm sure you recall, there were a series of meetings among the state legislatures to set guardrails to provide protections against a runaway convention. So those things already have been worked out. We do have plans for that. And I feel like you can vote for this with comfort that there won't be a runaway convention. And truly, this is something our constituents are extremely concerned about, the overreach of the federal government. And I hope that you will all vote for this today.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I was listening to comments made here, specifically from my colleague from the other side of Knox County, I must ask this question in the slot of rhetoric. Do you believe that the United States is the best and most powerful and strongest country on the planet?
Representative Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because of the foundation of this country, basically our Constitution, and then knowing that we're a constitutional republic where each and every citizen's rights are protected against a democratic process of where the mob would rule, I certainly believe we are protected. We have the best country in the world because of that. And there are always attacks on that. And one of the greatest attacks we've seen on that republic, that constitutional republic, is from Congress, how they have taken away states' rights year after year, decade after decade, by creating departments that take away responsibilities that are clearly with the states based on the constitutional provisions that we have. And we have ceded that power, unfortunately, to a ruling class. With term limits, industrious people could run and serve for a short time, then return to live under the laws they made. This would provide diversity of experience to a body which is severely lacking it. We're talking about term limits here, but there are other issues at stake. Unlike states, Congress has no balanced budget requirement. Studies have shown there's a strong correlation between the length of time a person has spent in Congress and their penchant for approving spending increases. Term limits would result in more fiscal responsibility while giving legislators the freedom to take on wasteful spending and debt. So we do have provisions that make us the greatest country in the world, and this, I believe, will make it even stronger.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think what I heard you read that, or what you just read was that you would be in favor of opening up other things like reducing the number of departments and to introduce a balanced budget amendment once the Constitution is open. Is that correct?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this resolution does is call for one simple thing, an Article 5 convention for one purpose, and that is for term limits on the U.S. Congress.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is that constitutional to open up the Constitution for one specific thing? Is that a constitutional resolution?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, as we've stated multiple times here, Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution gives us this direction, this option already. And that's all we're doing as the state of Tennessee is we're exercising the option given in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution that we can ask Congress for that purpose, limit it to that purpose, send delegates only for that purpose, and then enforce those delegates to make sure they carry out the will of this body once they call that convention and set a time and place. Congress has been asked to do this multiple times over the years. There's a multi-state effort right now to renew these resolutions and give them a fresh set of resolutions from as many states as possible. I firmly believe that once we get close to 30 or so, I believe Congress will immediately start acting to set their own limits because they don't really want us setting their limits. That's what I firmly believe and what I think will actually happen. But we must go through this process to show them that we're serious about this, that we're listening to our constituents. Again, over 80% of every single one of your districts believe this is the right thing to do. There's tons of polling on that year after year. It's actually gotten stronger the last couple of years. When this was presented before a couple of years ago, it was in the high 70s. It's risen several more points since then. We see the dysfunction in Washington. We see the out of control spending. We see the lack of fiscal responsibility because they have become career politicians. That's just the nature of what has been created. And this is one way that the states have rights to try to check that situation and bring it back into balance.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was about a 2-minute answer that said, no, it is unconstitutional because once they get there, they have the right to discuss any and everything that they want. So with that said, I just agree with my colleague. I agree with my colleague from Davidson County in that you're not answering the questions. Thank you.
Representative Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I stand and rise in support of this too. A few years ago, I passed a HJR, which Article 5 convention for a balanced budget amendment that has passed. We now have 29 states on board. Once we get to 34, we'll be able to call a convention, and it would take 38 states to ratify that. So we're near that point right now and hope to continue in that progress. It's been about a 7-year fight but we're going to keep fighting for a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And so I thank you for bringing this forward. Let me ask you something, because I keep hearing this on the House floor. Are we a republic or a democracy?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe all of my colleagues would agree we're a constitutional republic. That's what our form of government is and has been since we were founded.
Representative Powers.
I agree, and that's what I wanted to hear, because we keep hearing on this House floor mistakenly that we are a democracy. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and under that constitutional republic, we have provisions to do exactly what you're doing. And we already we passed the bill. Matter of fact, I carried the bill a few years ago to set the guardrails to where it cannot be a runaway convention, that there are only one thing that will be addressed. Mine is a balanced budget amendment, and of course yours is looking at congressional term limits. But in all 33 amendments right now so far that have been ratified in Congress have been submitted by Congress. We've never had the states to do this, but hopefully we're going to. And like you said, sometimes when we get near that point, the Congress will go ahead and do their own constitutional convention, which is fine as long as the things goes through. So the second method, of course, the convention option, is a political tool which Alexander Hamilton, writing in Federalist 85, argued would enable state legislators to erect barriers against the encroachments of national authority, and it has yet to be invoked. But all of the founders spoke about an Article 5 of convention and why we needed it and why it may become necessary at some point. And it has become necessary now. So I thank you for bringing this. And going back to what you said a little bit earlier that somebody misconstrued, we are citizen legislators here. We're down here 3 or 4 months out of the year. We're back home every weekend. We all have another job or we're retired. This is not a career, I don't think, for anyone here. And so that's why it became necessary to do this in Congress. That's why some of us voted against the thing about putting term limits here, because this is what the founders wanted. They did not want full-time legislators. They did not want career politicians. And sometimes that's what it's become in Congress. So thank you again for bringing this forward, and I fully support this bill.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion. I appreciate that support.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Representative Todd, for carrying this. When the constituents are surveyed, how many agree with U.S. term limits?
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 82%.
Representative Sparks.
You said 82%. You can't get anybody to agree on 82%. I just want to remind those folks that may be on the fence about this, the latest Gallup poll, congressional approval rating is 18%. 18%. Appreciate you carrying this. The difference between us and Congress, we're not accepting millions of dollars of campaign contributions from Big Pharma. We're not up there going in there maybe worth 200,000, coming out worth 30 and 40 million. We're at the post office. We're at Publix, Food Line. Thank you for this, and I just want to encourage other members to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are implications to that balanced budget amendment. Yeah, I'm all for a balanced budget amendment, but since about 40% of our budget comes from the federal budget, there's not going to be that $2.8 billion surplus for, you guys to fight over on whose district it goes to. We'll have to do our job here and make real decisions and find revenue. So that's going to go away. But I've only got one question for the sponsor. I don't know if they're going to have this convention. They hadn't selected a site yet, because we surely don't want it in Nashville.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to remind my colleagues that the complacency of we the people has led us to the place we are today, where we are taxed beyond what is reasonable, where our rights to our property, to our well-being, and our decisions about our well-being have been imposed upon us by tyrannical actions of people who are operating outside their authorities in DC. If we continue this complacent path and the timid men and women that have allowed this to happen do not rise up against this, our future becomes a bit more bleak. I will offer you this, sponsor. I appreciate your courage. On behalf of all of those men and women who have served from Valley Forge to Gettysburg to Normandy and Iwo Jima and even the battlefields in Iraq, where I saw my soldier breathe his last breath as he served that Constitution. We owe it to them to no longer be timid, to stand and resolve that we are free men and women of the great state of Tennessee. Thank you.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 5, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 66, 27 nays, 3 present on voting.
House Joint Resolution 5, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The motion reeks here is tabled. Call up the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 799 by Chairman Zachary and others relative to residential and energy codes.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Moves passage of House Bill 799 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Zachary moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt the amendment. Defer to that sponsor up there for a further.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this simply states that the IECC Energy Code of 2018 established by the Fire Marshal. When the Fire Marshal establishes that code after going through government ops, this ensures that that is the ceiling for energy codes in this state. The standards cannot be higher than that. That's all it does. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Renew my motion.
Chairman Zachary renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've debated this bill with you a couple of times, so I'm going to just make some of these comments publicly so others can hear it. You know, the construction that happens here in Nashville is different than the construction that happens in many of your communities. We have a different environment here. We have a different weather patterns. We've got 3 distinct weather and environmental patterns across our state: west, middle, and east. And today, right now, each municipality has the ability to set their energy code as they see fit. The market can decide whether or not that's what they want to see. The market can decide whether or not they want to buy a house that's more energy efficient or not. But a municipality has the right to set that energy code. We have issues with energy production and energy supply. We've got areas that don't have enough capacity for construction of new energy and infrastructure costs. We've got areas of the state that don't have enough water supply, which this energy code controls. We are tying the hands of our municipalities to have smart, intelligent growth in the communities that they represent. The most local decision that should be made is zoning and building codes, because it affects the locality almost exclusively. And this bill is going to tie the hands of those municipalities. It's going to require any change to come back before this body, the most cumbersome possibility I can think of, to come back before this body to update that energy code every single year, because what we're going to hear in a second is the cost of this energy code. Every single year, the cost of new construction materials goes down. Everything costs more when it's new. But we are going to cap this at 2018. 2018. I bet you nobody in this room has an iPhone or a phone from 2018. All right, fine, maybe 2 or 3 people. Not always right. But this is taking away from local control. And I urge you to vote against this. You are going to not be able to, in your own local municipality, be able to control how buildings get built. The most local of local control. And thank you.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, at the process today, the fire marshal sets the energy code, the IECC energy code at 2018. The challenge that we face today is the inconsistency across the state. Many municipalities operate under 2012. Some tried 2015, but it was simply unfeasible. They went back to 2012. Some under 2018. The challenge with some of our most recent energy codes, specifically 22 and 24, some of them require a charging station in each garage. Some of them require standards and measures simply related to energy reduction, energy efficiency. They're simply make home ownership unattainable for the middle class. The working families, as we continue to look at energy codes that are put out by the IECC, it adds significant costs, anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 per house for some of the standards that are required in the newest energy codes. And what we're simply saying here is when the fire marshal sets the standard, that is the standard for the state, and the locals cannot go above that. That's exactly right. But in order for that to change, then the fire marshal comes before calendar and rules. They promulgate rules when he deems it necessary to change. This does not limit a builder in any way, whether it's Representative Hicks, Representative Burkhart, our Hall of Famer, Representative Burkhart. If they want to put the 2024 standards in every house, fantastic. They have the ability to do that. We're not limiting the builders and what the builders can do. We're simply saying the state will set the standard, and it's not to go above that standard. Again, if a builder wants to go above that, that's his prerogative to be able to do that. But you take a city like Boulder, who is considering the newest standards. It requires electric portions of the house. It requires solar panels. That's simply unattainable. You literally price out middle class and lower middle class families from being able to buy a new home. It's simply unsustainable. And Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, I would, since I called Representative Hicks' name, since he is a builder, he actually, somebody is going to ask me, well, give us an example of where this actually happens in Tennessee. Well, Representative Hicks, if it's okay with you, Speaker, has some examples.
Technically, it's Representative Freeman's time. So if Representative Freeman, you have anything else? You sure? All right. We just make sure we're staying within the rules. Thank you. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, one of the biggest problems that I've seen over the last few years is exactly what my friend from Davidson County was explaining. You'll go to one municipality and they'll have a certain standard on this issue. Then you'll go to a neighboring municipality and they'll have another standard on this issue. And it is extremely hard to keep up with. And what that does is whose money it is, it's the homeowner's money. That's who needs to be making the decision on this. This is no different than upgrading your carpet, upgrading your hardwood floors, putting a central vacuum system in your home. This is a choice that a homeowner should be making. And this will clarify and put the state on a standard. And then if a homeowner chooses to go above that, they will be able to do that, but it will be their decision. And, you know, $7,500 for a house with some of these standards is a low number. I built homes that it can be $20,000 and $25,000. As a home builder, I do not like wasting people's money. And that's what a lot of these codes do. It puts a standard out there that really sets it at a good pace. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, the amendment you have in front of you on this bill, it was drafted by the Department of Commerce and Insurance. It was agreed to by many stakeholders, home builders, architects, and many others that came together and collaborated on this final amendment. And let me make another point. Many kind of are reading the summary. The summary of this was actually incorrect. It doesn't reflect the amendment, because if you look at the original bill language, which was a couple of pages, the amendment literally is half a page. And so it's simplified. It was brought together by all stakeholders. And it just ensures consistency across our state.
Representative Spicky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does this bill allow the locals that have 2012 or less than 2018 to maintain those standards?
Representative Zachary.
It does, yes, sir.
Representative Spicky.
Does it restrict the locals if they want to adopt one above 18? It does not allow them to do that. Is that correct?
Representative Zachary.
That is correct. They can stay below, but they cannot go above. Correct.
Representative Spicky.
And enable for that to change, it would have to be at the state level. If we wanted to go to 26, if it comes along, or they would have to change that at the state level. The locals could not change that, correct?
Representative Zachary.
Correct. They'll have to go before Chairman Reagan's state fire marshal. Will have to go before Chairman Reagan, go through government ops, promulgate a rule to change it. Correct.
Representative Spicky. Thank you. Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the sponsor for working so hard on this bill. I've followed it pretty closely. 30% of a new home cost is government regulation. And for every $1,000 in Tennessee, we take out 6,000 Tennesseans from owning a home. And we've already got the cost to where the average first-time home buyer in Tennessee is 36 years old. And as long as we keep doing this, we're just going to keep driving that number up. I appreciate the sponsor. I appreciate all your support on this bill so we can try to keep home ownership affordable. Thank you.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Representative Zachary does. Representative Towns.
Yes, sir. Mr. Representative, obviously, one of the things all of us want to do in this country is try to be able to afford a house. Very important, very critical. In many middle-class neighborhoods, people are making the money we think, yet they still can't afford a house. Compounded with these high interest rates today makes it even more unrealistic to be able to afford a house. Okay, and I'm with that. In order to stabilize communities and get the kind of progress in our communities that we want, home ownership is key. Building wealth, home ownership is key. All this is key to accomplishing those kinds of things. Now, there was a question asked on the floor, and you gave an answer to it. If there is an emergency that happens to come out across the country that necessitates some quick action from the locals in order to save lives, will there be any flexibility to accomplish that?
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Towns, that's a good question. Probably need some clarity on. So the energy codes are only related to energy reduction and energy efficiency within a new home. It has nothing to do with the safety aspect related to this. That has no bearing on this. This is just the energy codes, and the energy codes are specific to efficiency and reduction, energy reduction.
Representative Towns.
Thank you for that. But so for the record, God forbid, probably nothing will ever happen, but foresight, a little bit of wisdom, we're stating that it will not prevent locals from being able to do something that's going to save the people, and we're specifically concentrating on prerequisite energy codes that drive the cost of the house up.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This has no bearing or impact on locals protecting the people within their community, their safety, lives, and well-being.
Representative Towns.
Mr. Representative, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
All right. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 799 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Butler, aye. Todd, aye. Let the journal reflect. Travis is excused. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 74, 20 nays.
House Bill 799, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 165 by Representative Butler relative to service animals. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0451.
Representative Butler moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 451, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for passage of Senate Bill 0451 on third and final consideration.
Representative Butler moves passage of Senate Bill 451 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment adds conditions for when an owner of an establishment may ask for a dog guide or dog guide in training to be removed and makes a violation of this section a Class C misdemeanor. Therefore, we're going to move to adopt this amendment.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, as many of you have probably seen folks carrying dogs into businesses and establishments, this bill is simply to codify some of the federal ADA guidelines and add some accountability for folks that are abusing this. And I want to just briefly review some of the items that it codifies. That a service animal is defined as a dog. And there is one exception under that rule for a miniature horse with some very specific guidelines. But a business is only allowed to ask 2 questions of an individual with a service animal, and that is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has that dog been trained to perform? And so above that, I renew my motion.
Representative Butler renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Representative Keisling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will sponsor yield?
Representative Butler.
Quick.
Yes, sir.
Keisling.
I apologize, sponsor. I should have run this by for it, but I know we've got in my district a restaurant, a couple of them actually, where customers come in with their dogs. They're not service dogs. They're they're pets, clearly, and both establishments are just really. Can they be removed? I mean, is there anything that would allow a business owner to ask that person where there wouldn't be a violation or what?
Representative Butler.
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked that, Chairman Keisling. A service animal is defined as one that provides a specific service. And an emotional support animal, as you're most likely referencing, is not considered a service animal, and therefore a business owner has the ability to ask them to leave.
Representative Keisling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay. I just want to make sure that they wouldn't be in violation of any state or federal statute there. Okay. Well, that wraps me up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Thank you, Representative Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll renew my motion.
Representative Butler renews motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 451 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member vote, as any member wish to change their vote? Let the journal reflect Representative McKenzie's excused. Take the vote, Mr. Clerk.
Ayes 89, 5 nays.
Senate Bill 451 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Motion for reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 163 by Representative Butler relative to children.
Representative Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 0163 on third and final consideration.
Representative Butler moves passage. Following section. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Butler, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply reduces the time frame for a bandit from 120 days down to 90 days for children under the age of 4. And then further allows, if that child is being cared for by a foster family, that the judge has the ability to waive the 180-day statute down to 90 days so that we can expedite the process for adoption and really eliminate a lot of the problems that we have right now. That, just to give you a few statistics, most children are moved around 3 times in the first year that they're in foster care. And this type of legislation will help reduce that. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Butler renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Bill 163 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Has any member wish to change their vote? Vital, aye. Leatherwood, aye. Faison, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 92, 2 nays.
House Bill 163, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The most reconsidered is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 159 by Representative Capley relative to the possession of weapons on school property. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Capley, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0172.
Representative Capley moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 172 without objection. So ordered. Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 172 on third and final consideration.
Representative Capley moves passage of Senate Bill 172 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Capley, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill exempts the possession or carrying of a pocket knife by a non-student adult from the offense of carrying a weapon on school property if the knife remains concealed at all times while the adult is on school property for the sole purpose of voting in an election where the school is the adult's assigned polling place. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Capley renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for clear explanation, this is for adult schools only.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, this is for an adult that would go into a school that's their designated polling place. School will not be in session. It would just be, they're going for the only purpose of voting.
Representative Shaw. All right. Any further discussion? Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you give me the definition of a pocket knife, what it means in this instance?
Representative Capley.
Yes, sir. Let's see here. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As used in subdivision B2, pocket knife means a knife with one or more blades that fold or collapse into the knife's attached handle and that can be carried inside a person's pocket when collapsed and folded. So it has to be able to be in the pocket collapsed.
Representative Dixie.
So this bill doesn't determine like the blade length of a pocket knife. It could be, as long as it fits in a pocket, it's okay.
Representative Capley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This would be, I mean, if you can fold it, collapse it, and get it in the pocket, that would be in the summary of the bill. It has to be able to, fit in the pocket.
Representative Dixie.
So the answer to my question is there is no requirement for a blade length.
Representative Capley.
It's not defined in this bill right now as far as blade length, but it would have to fit in your pocket. I mean, I don't think you could fit like a samurai sword in your pocket. It would have to be able to fold. And
Representative Dixie.
I'm just saying some people have custom clothes made and pockets can be made to varying lengths. And so I think it's a little vague to not have that requirement in there. But hey, it's your bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? No showing pocket knives. It's okay. Just keep them in your pocket. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 172 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast a vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Crawford, aye. Gillespie, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 82, 10 nays, 1 present, not voting.
All those Senate Bill 172 and received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most reconsidered is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 294 by Representative Freeman and others relative to suicide prevention. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill
0350.
Representative Freeman moves substitute form Senate Bill 350, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0350 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage of Senate Bill 350 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill, so I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Chairman White moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, we unanimously passed the Save Tennessee Students Act, which required middle and high school students or schools to include suicide prevention information on all student IDs. What this bill does is expands it to colleges and makes a small change to include the new national suicide prevention hotline number 988 on those IDs. It also contemplates what should happen in the case they have digital IDs. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 350 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Sparks, aye. Crawford, aye. Butler, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 350 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection to the most read series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 892 by Representative Reedy relative to school personnel. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1155.
Chairman Reedy moves substitute form Senate Bill 1155 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1155 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reedy moves passage of Senate Bill 1155 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this adds the director of schools as a person to whom a principal must report direct knowledge of an assault and battery or vandalism endangering life, health, or safety committed by a student on school property or receiving a report of such action. It expands who commits offenses of assault and battery or vandalism on school property endangering the life, health, or safety of others, as well as the educator will receive benefits in accordance with Tennessee Code Annotated 49-5-714 if the educator is a teacher who is absent from the teacher's assigned duties as a result of personal injury caused by a physical assault or other violent crime act committed against the teacher in the course of the teacher's employment activities. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reedy renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1155, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Let the journal reflect Representative Freeman's excuse. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 1155 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection to most read series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1445 by Chairman Faison relative to higher education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to substitute and form Senate Bill 834.
Chairman Faison moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 834, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage on Senate Bill 834 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Faison moves passage of Senate Bill 834 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
I renew my motion.
Chairman Faison renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Beck, is that a recognized hand or just a resting hand? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you explain, I wasn't on any of the committees that this went through. Would you mind explaining your bill, please, sir?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, sir. This bill is putting into law that our higher education colleges that have Wi-Fi will not make available on Wi-Fi any app that is associated in part or in whole with the Chinese Communist Party.
Representative Beck.
And you can actually do that on your routers coming into technologically, this can be accomplished.
Chairman Faison.
Yes, sir.
Representative Beck. All right, Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a feeling we're discussing one particular app in particular. This same app is being discussed in a hearing today in the federal government. Would the sponsor be interested in rolling this bill until the conclusion of these hearings in Congress?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And regardless of what they get done in DC, we want to make sure we're doing it right here in Tennessee. So I would prefer us voting for it today.
Chairman Clemens.
And can you explain exactly why we're seeking to limit access to TikTok on our college campuses?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill does not mention that app, and we're just saying if you're associated with the Chinese Communist Party.
Chairman Clemens.
I think it references the People's Republic of China, not the Communist Party itself that happens to run the People's Republic of China. But are there any other apps other than TikTok, to your knowledge, that qualify under this legislation?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If there were, I'd hope they would ban those two.
Chairman Clemens.
But you don't know of any others other than that one app?
Chairman Faison.
Correct.
Chairman Clemens.
Do you have any concerns about information being shared on that app, or can you provide us with any information providing the basis for your concerns, giving grounds to banning an app operated or hosted by a company based in the People's Republic of China?
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As far as giving particulars, I'm not going to give you a particular. I would just say that if you're associated with that country as a business, we need to be careful with our internet and capabilities of things that they can find. Our security, whether it's internet security or our physical security, is one of the most important things we should do. And I personally believe that this is internet security that we should make sure all of our higher institutions are doing.
Chairman Clemens.
But we don't have any concerns about any of the computer software that's bought by the state of Tennessee or any other governmental agency that is produced or made in China, or the iPhones sitting on almost every member's desk that is perhaps manufactured in China, that actually holds data, collects data, information, photographs. We don't have any concern about any of that. It's just this specific app.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would probably support you if you brought a bill to take care of those things, Representative Clemens.
Chairman Clemens.
I think you might have a problem. You try to take everybody's iPhone away from them. But all right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Parkinson.
I'm over here, Mr. Sponsor. Sponsor, this bill will stop the use of TikTok app on our public institutions' Wi-Fi, right? That's what I want to make sure I'm correct on the bill.
Chairman Faison.
If there is an app that's associated with the People's Republic of China, it would stop them on Wi-Fi from post-secondary institutions.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Speaker. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's an American company that owns TikTok here. Am I correct?
Chairman Faison.
I'm not sure if that's true, but if that said company doesn't have any connection to the People's Republic of China, I guess it won't be a problem.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, the Make America Great hats were made in China. Are we going to ban those?
There's a little off base. We're on a software app. Representative Parkinson.
Thank you for not answering that, Mr. Sponsor. I understand. The silence is deafening. But Mr. Sponsor, my daughter will be going to college this year in the fall. You have a daughter in college?
Chairman Faison.
I do.
Representative Parkinson.
Does she know about this bill?
Chairman Faison.
She does.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all I want to get out. Thank you, sir.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would remind the gentleman from Shelby County that I let her know that we didn't even have smartphones or apps when we were in college, and we made it just like you did.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the sponsor, one question. Does this bill allow us to shoot Chinese panda bears?
Representative Hardaway at where you want to go. You at White's desk.
Strange as it seems, I support your bill, sir. And with the understanding that it's not merely about the app, it's about who has access to the data that's collected by the app. And I can tell all my colleagues with the progression of artificial intelligence or AI, you will thank yourself and you will thank the sponsor for putting this bill forward. Those countries which receive all of the data and the detailed information that we're sharing on social media in particular and through other means, they can start to use it in a way that it makes them a threat to us in terms of homeland security. So outside of all of the jokes in there, some were good, some weren't. This is a very important bill, and we do need to come back and look at the equipment itself that's coming in from these countries and how the backdoors allow them to access data. I support your bill, sir.
Out of order. Representative Mitchell.
And Mr. Sponsor, hold on to the podium. I support your bill as well. For the same reasons that Representative Hardaway cited, we don't know what information is being transmitted to the CCP, but I just want you to, I know you have one aim with this, TikTok, but there's also the alternative to Twitter that was bankrolled by the Chinese. So let's when that comes out, let's make sure that one's banned as well.
Representative Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Objection? There's objection. All right. Please vote on TikTok, right? We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. We're on previous question. It's previous question. It's previous question. It's previous question. You all raised your hands. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote. Take the vote.
Ayes 77, 13 nays.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 834 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Holsley, aye. Let the journal reflect Representative Barrett, Dixie are excused. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 80, 11 nays.
Senate Bill 834 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most for considered is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 723 by Chairman Holsey, relative to firearms. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 515.
Chairman Holsey moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 515 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Holsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 515 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Holsey moves passage of Senate Bill 515 on third and final consideration. Second, Ms. Clerk, call first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does, under existing law, if you're a retired police officer and you work full-time at a higher education university, you can go armed. But part-time officers can't. So all this bill does is say if you're retired in good standing from a law enforcement agency and you're working part-time at higher education, you can carry. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Holsey renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the Representative Mitchell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he working part-time as in security on the campus?
Representative Holsey.
Sir, no, sir, working in any capacity at the university.
Representative Mitchell. Good. All right.
All I needed to know.
Any further discussion? Any objection to Representative Hardaway?
Thank you, Speaker. Just want to get clarification. Any job would include teaching, a professor, assistant professor?
Representative Holsey.
That is correct. Under existing law, a professor or assistant professor or a staff member who works full-time and has an enhanced carry permit can also carry under existing law.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. So this would include the mandatory enhancement permit.
Representative Holsey.
No, it doesn't, because most officers who retire have a LEOSA permit, which is good in all 50 states. But the law specifically says full-time, and I'm trying to go back and capture part-time retired officers that work at the university.
Representative Hardaway.
So part-time officers, the only difference in the requirements and the situation would be that they're part-time. All the rest of the language stays in place.
Representative Holsey.
That is correct.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 515, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye 79, 11 nays.
Senate Bill 515, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 68 by Chairman Haston and others relative to the learning loss remediation and student acceleration program. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Hastings, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 249.
Chairman Hastings moves substitute and form Senate Bill 249, properly second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 249 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hastings moves passage of Senate Bill 249 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hastings, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2021, we passed the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act. The act only required learning camps for 2021 and 2022, and it was for grades 1st through 8th. This bill does two things. It extends these learning camps indefinitely, and it also adds kindergarten and 9th grade students to those eligible to take part in these learning camps. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hastings renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens. You can use the campers. There you go.
I think Leader Lambert did on purpose. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is an amendment to the third grade retention bill, specifically with regard to one aspect of it. Is that correct? I understand, and I hope there is more amendments coming that will further amend that legislation. Is this the whole amendment we can expect this year, or is there another one coming?
Representative Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for the question. This is just the first step. We had a third grade retention bill pass out of full committee yesterday that will be coming forth pretty soon. That'll deal with some extra on-ramps to promotion and also strengthen what we already have in place with fourth grade promotion. This dovetails really well with that.
listening to a lot of districts, they were really concerned about making sure that we do some early identification and early supports as soon as possible. And this bill continues these learning camps that we've already seen a lot of success with. And it also adds, like I said, kindergartners and ninth graders as well.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. I appreciate that. And is this going to be accessible and available to each and every student in an equitable manner, or are there any concerns remaining that certain students among certain populations will be left out from accessing these learning camps?
Representative Haston.
It will have consistent application to the state. Priority students at each school will have to qualify. That would be the first level that would be eligible to do this, would be those that are priority students at each school, but it will have consistent application to the state.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, in your testimony, I heard you say this is going to extend this indefinitely. And I just want to make clear, this no way is going to continue in. This is specific to the expenditure of these funds.
Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, this doesn't have anything to do, this is not a third grade retention bill per se. This has to do with the summer learning loss camps and the reading camps that were already in place the last 2 years. It's just extending those supports and adding kindergarten and ninth graders to be eligible for that.
Representative Powell.
Thank you for that answer. I just want to make sure it was clear that that was not the intent of this legislation. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 249 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Clemens, aye. Let the journal reflect. Representative Williams and Zachary are excused. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Bill 249 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed by objection. The motion read serious table. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 448 by Representative Davis and others relative to public meetings.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 448 on third and final consideration.
Representative Davis moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is to exclude from application meetings of a governing body held to conduct disciplinary hearings and meetings where there are no actionable items on the agenda. We're going to defer to Representative Davis for further explanation, Mr. Speaker. We move to adopt.
Chairman Kiesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Representative Davis, Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt amendment number 2. This amendment changed the effective date from upon passage to July the 1st, 2023.
Representative Davis moves adoption of amendment number 2, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Since this was non-committee amendment, it's going on the board. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Cochran, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 87, no nays, 1 present, not voting.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption of House Bill 448 as amended. And essentially, this bill allows for a governing body to have a public comment period. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Davis renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell.
Thank you. Sponsor, I had a question, and I realize this, you said that this gives a public comment period, but could this possibly limit citizen participation and the ability to participate in that public comment? And also my second component of that question is, I have a concern about if you had a very contentious issue, that being applied unequally, so that, you know, there could be one day there's a 30-minute public comment, and the next day that public comment might be limited to, say, 5 minutes. I just want to make sure that if you could address those issues.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to answer those questions, essentially, this does allow for those reasonable restrictions for that governing body to allow for the amount of time, the number of speakers, to ensure that the topics are germane to the agenda. But it also specifically states that that governing body shall take all practical steps to ensure that opposing viewpoints are represented fairly. So we want to make sure that citizens do have the right to redress their government, which is under their First Amendment protections, and then also to make sure that those opposing viewpoints are allowed to be presented as well.
Representative Powell. Pass. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, on the language which says that there have to be actionable items, agenda items, that's not to be interpreted as the vote on those or the action on those items has to be in that meeting, but just if they are actionable items at some point.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Essentially, what that does address is there were some concerns for some groups about workshops, that they didn't want to have too many public comments or that to take up their time for those workshop meetings. They wanted to essentially allow for public comment to be on the governing body's meetings where votes would be taken, where there could be potential action for those meetings. Does that answer your question?
Representative Hardaway.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to rephrase it. Even if the vote for that actionable item is not on that date or in that particular meeting, and in some regards, I would say that we could schedule debate for one meeting, the vote for the next meeting. Your goal is not to allow governmental bodies to circumvent that period for public to be involved.
Representative Davis.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And you are correct. Essentially, what we're allowing for is we're creating kind of a general brace to allow for specificity elsewhere for that governing body to determine how they want to implement that in practice. And so in order to make sure that citizens' voices are heard, we do want to make sure that public comment, that time frame is codified. So if there are actionable items that are taken, that governing body has to put that public comment on their agenda.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Thank you, sponsor.
Any further? Representative Davis.
And with that, I'll renew my motion.
Representative Davis renews her motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All righty. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 448 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Keesley, no. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 82, 6 nays.
House Bill 448, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 99 by Representative Alexander and others, a resolution to confirm the appointment of Ron Ramsey of Blunteville to the State University Board of East Tennessee State University. Mr. Speaker, the Senate Joint Resolutions on the desk.
Representative Alexander, you are recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. I move to substitute SJR 132 for HJR 99.
Representative Alexander moves to substitute Senate Joint Resolution 132 for House Joint Resolution 99. Properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Alexander, you are recognized.
I move to concur in SJR 132.
Representative Alexander moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 132. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Alexander, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This resolution is to reappoint Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey to ETSU's Board of Trustees, and I renew my motion.
Representative Alexander renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Joint Resolution 132, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Aye. Mr. Clerk. Take the vote.
Ayes 83, nays, one present not voting.
Senate Joint Resolution 132, as amended, has received constitutional majority. I hereby declare it concurred in without objection. The motion reads serious table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 427 by Representative Jones and others, a resolution to honor and commend Dr. Charles Kimbrough for his outstanding community leadership.
Representative Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR 427.
Representative Jones moves adoption. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Chairman Faison, Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Move adoption.
Chairman Faison moves adoption. Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All right. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are on. Representative Jones.
Thank you so much, colleagues. This is my first time in the well, and honestly, I'm kind of sad to have to be here today. I filed this resolution for Dr. Charles Kimbrough, who was born 1927 in Prospect, Tennessee, in Giles County on Route 1, where he told me he shucked corn and picked cotton. And he was one of the first people to welcome me when I came to Fisk University and has mentored me and has really taught me and has been an elder and an honorary grandfather and a teacher of the movement. And his wife called to tell me that he was in the hospital, which is the reason why I filed this. He's 95, he'll be 96 in a couple months. And I'm sad because it was bumped. And the reason why it was bumped, I was told was because of a sentence that I didn't even write in this resolution. I just gave the bio to legal, and then I got the resolution back, and I just wanted to make sure that we got it voted on as quick as possible. And the sentence that was objected to was that Dr. Kimbrough fought for oppressed people. And that was something that some members, some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle objected to. And my friend Representative Faison said it was because some members don't believe that there is such a thing as oppressed people. And so last night, as I was preparing to come here today, I called his wife, Dr. Blondell Strong. I'm happy to say that he is at home, and she said that she would be here, but she can't leave him alone at home. And, you know, we talked a while and we talked about Dr. Kimbrough, and I'll be going there after I leave this chamber. And she also was disheartened. She told me to tell you all, to tell you his story. Dr. Kimbrough was born in Giles County, just miles from where the Klan was founded in 1927. He served in the Korean War, earned a Purple Heart Medical Combat Award and Bronze Star in 1950. And as a result of those injuries he sustained, you know, he won these medals. And when he came back to Tennessee in his Army uniform, he was told he could not walk on the sidewalk. She told me to ask you what you call that, if not oppression. He went to Tennessee A&I and then went to Tuskegee Institute to become one of the first Black veterinarians in Tennessee. And the reason why he couldn't go to veterinary school in Tennessee is because no school would accept Black students. She told me to ask you what you call that. The reason he picked cotton and shucked corn on Route 1, Prospect, Tennessee, is because the bus that went by his school in Giles County didn't pick up Black students. She told me to ask you what you call that. As a civil rights activist, he went around the nation founding branches of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in Sparta, Illinois, Du Quoin, Illinois, Pulaski, Tennessee, and Waverly, Tennessee. When he was president of the Nashville branch from 1973 to 1980, they burned a cross outside the Nashville branch of the NAACP right here in this city. She told me to ask you what you call that. I know that there's a movement to try and minimize the struggle of our elders and our ancestors. We want to teach this as ancient history. My own grandmother who raised me, Harriet Parks, was born 1929. And so we know that this is not ancient history to happen in the lifetime of our families. And so as I see this movement to whitewash our history, it makes me sad because some of you also live that history. And I question, why are we trying why are we so afraid of the words oppressed and oppression? It reminds me of Moses telling Pharaoh, let my people go. And scripture says Pharaoh hardened his heart. He was probably thinking, they're not oppressed. What do they need to be let go from? And so, colleagues, I just asked you to reflect on the movement of this legislation. I know everyone didn't agree with this motion to bump this off the consent calendar, but I know the chairman said that a few members objected to that word that I did not even put in, that legal put into there. I just wanted to get this passed. But it would not be honoring Dr. Kimbrough if I came here today and did not tell his story and say that he did fight oppression in America, and that though Dr. Kimbrough represents and embodies the best of America, he faced the worst of America. And that when we look in this movement to censor words, I say that the only people who are triggered by the word oppressed and oppression are oppressors. And so I ask us colleagues to let us go to higher ground. Let us tell the truth of our history and not be ashamed of it, but learn from it and honor those elders who are still living and who are telling the truth. I pray that Dr. Kimbrough gets well and I can give him this HJR on this House floor in person. I hope he does, because I want you to see him. I want you to see a true hero. May the South remember true heroes.
All right, we're still on the amendment. So we are voting on the amendment. It's on the board since it's on the floor. All those in favor of amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 70, 10 nays.
Amendment number 1 is adopted. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All right, we're voting. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 427 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 76, 1 nay.
House Joint Resolution 427, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. Most for serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 633 by Representative Darby and others relative to air ambulance membership. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to SB 0504.
Representative Darby moves substitute form, Senate Bill 504, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of SB 0504 on third and final consideration.
Representative Darby moves passage of Senate Bill 504 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 633 protects the TennCare population from predatory sales of unnecessary products sold under the guise of protecting them from expense they will never actually incur. Our ambulance memberships are sold to individuals with the purpose of protecting them from out-of-pocket expenses incurring upon receipt of our ambulance support. While these memberships are helpful for some people, TennCare recipients have no deductibles or copays, yet are still targeted by bad actors in this industry who use the threat of financial ruin and the off chance that the recipient needs an air transport. This bill would prohibit a company from knowingly sell a membership to a TennCare recipient. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I renew my motion.
Representative Darby renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 504 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts their vote, any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86, no nays.
Senate Bill 504, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Most for serious table. Call up next bill. Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution 159 by Chairman Faison.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage of SR 159.
Chairman Faison.
Motion to concur. SJR 159.
Chairman Faison moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 159, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you might recall a month ago, we bumped SJR 159 from the consent calendar and then later held it on the desk instead of voting it a couple weeks ago. The very resolution for you today is for one specific purpose: to celebrate the centennial of Tennessee credit unions. 100 years ago today, on March 23rd, 1923, Governor Austin Peay signed Senate Bill 241, establishing state chartered credit unions in Tennessee for the first time. 100 years later, Tennessee is served by 132 credit unions with 2.4 million members, holding $38.5 billion in assets, and have an economic impact of $2.9 billion annually. Tennessee credit unions employ 16,000 people across the state and provide $305 million in annual benefits for Tennessee consumers, which averages out to $265 per household. Join us today in the gallery to commemorate the occasions are Fred Robinson, President of Tennessee Credit Union League, Pam Kay, CEO of Jack Daniels Employees Credit Union, Tricia Cunningham, CEO of Tennessee Employees Credit Union, Bennett Dawson, CEO of Old Hickory Credit Union, Joel Forbes, CEO of Kimberly Clark Credit Union, John Jacoy, CEO of Southeastern Financial Credit Union, Laura Parham, CEO of Heritage South Community Credit Union, Ron Smith, CEO of Embright Credit Union, Todd Swim, CEO of Leaders Credit Union, Brian Trotter, CEO of EPB Credit Union, and Donna Young, CEO of Cornerstone Financial Federal Credit Union. I'd also like to acknowledge that Representative Sam McKimsey, he's currently serves on the board of members for ONRL Federal Credit Union. Thank you for all your service to the Tennesseans of the last 100 years and more. Mr. Speaker, after consulting with the leaders on both sides, I ask that all members vote in an affirmative for SJR 159 be added as co-prime sponsors, and I renew my motion.
You didn't do anything wrong, sir. Without objection, exclusions duly noted. All right. Chairman Faison renews his motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Joint Resolution 159 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member cast their votes, every member change their vote. Let the journal reflect Representative Powers is excused. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 84, no nays, one present, not voting.
Senate Joint Resolution 159 and received constitutional majority. I hereby declare it concurred in. Without objection, the most reconsidered table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction. Consider of HJR 473.
Mr. Clerk, read the caption.
House Joint Resolution 473 by Chairman Faison, a resolution to honor, commend acclaimed songwriter and musician Mitch Russell.
You heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of HJR number 473.
Chairman Faison moves adoption of House Joint Resolution 473. Properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 473 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I declare adopted. Objection to most reconsidered table. Representative McCalman, you're recognized. Oh, lost another one. At Vital's desk.
I broke it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after talking with both leaders, I move that the rules be suspended for immediate consideration of SJR 360.
Mr. Clark, read the caption.
Senate Joint Resolution 360 by Representative McCalman, a resolution to honor the memory of Kim Renee Hilper of Franklin.
You heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Representative McCalman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in SJR 360.
Representative McCalman moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 360. Properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor are saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I declare it concurred in. Without objection, most reconsidered table. Representative Ritchie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, I made a motion for a rule change, and I've spoken with several of the members. There's some concern. I know that it was brought up in the Rules Committee today. They did an experimental of how long it would take, and they approximated it's about 4 hours through that committee in calendar rules. And although I completely agree with the constituents and the folks from across the state of Tennessee that every vote down here should be counted, and the representatives' votes in all of our committees, I'm passionate about working with Chairman of the Select Rule Committee and making sure that we get the correct verbiage. So with that, I ask that this amendment be moved to the select calendar rules.
That's a proper motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor, when the bell rings, vote aye. All those opposed, vote no. We're voting to send to the Select Committee on Rules. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 78, 7 nays.
Motion prevails. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1376 be heard in the Government Operations Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 514 be heard in the Criminal Justice Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1295 be heard in K through 12 Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1511 be heard in the Health Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is spring, and we're all excited about that. The chair of the Seersucker Caucus has asked me to announce that the Seersucker Caucus will meet next Thursday morning in session. Ladies and gentlemen, please wear your finest seersucker duds and meet in the well after session for a photo. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thursday, next Thursday.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this upcoming Monday, March the 27th, the Joint Government Operations Rule Review Committee will hold our monthly meeting at 1000 hours. That's 10 a.m. Afterwards, at 1:30 p.m., the Full House Government Operations Committee will meet to hear regular calendar. Both of these meetings will be in House Hearing Room 1. Again, Joint Government Operations Rule Review will be at 10 o'clock in the morning, House Hearing Room 1 next Monday. Regular committee meeting at 1:30, same room next Monday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Love. Representative Love.
Representative Love.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just trying to get clarity on the timing of the Seersucker Caucus. It seems every year we get earlier and earlier. I just wanted to make sure that this meeting was not premature and that it's not going to snow on Thursday when y'all wear your seersuckers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and respect to the Reverend, but spring has sprung. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any further announcements? Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the following reports have been filed with the clerk's office and are available for review by any member who wishes to do so. The Department of Human Services Public Chapter 308 Second Quarter Report, the 2022 Annual Report on Blasting Fines in Tennessee from the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's Office, the Annual Report of Tennessee Emergency Board of Fiscal Year 2022 pursuant to TCA 7-86-128B3 and 7-86-315.
All right. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 85 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 5 p.m. on Monday, March 27th, 2023.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 5 p.m. on Monday, March 27th, 2023.